Imagine a boy, 17 years old, standing at the threshold of adulthood. His world is filled with noise, the pressure of school, the uncertainty of the future, the constant pull of comparison. And yet in the middle of it all, he begins to uncover a different kind of guidance. Quiet words from the Stoics, whose wisdom has endured for centuries. This is his story, a journey into manhood told through the four virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Ancient truths meeting modern life, one lesson at a time. The boy was 17.
His room was quiet, except for the low hum of a fan and the soft tapping of rain against the window. He sat at his desk, books spread out, phone glowing beside him. The world felt heavy in his hands. Decisions about the future, the constant pressure to be more, to achieve, to compare himself against friends who seemed so sure of their paths. Tonight, though, he didn't scroll. He opened a worn book instead, a copy of Meditations that his grandfather had left behind. On the first page was a line from Marcus Aurelius: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He paused. The words sank in slowly, like rain seeping into dry earth. He thought about the stress he carried: grades, college, money, friends. Most of it, he realized, wasn't fully in his control. But his thoughts, his choices, his way of meeting each day, those belonged to him. That night, he decided on something simple. Whenever worry rose up, he would ask himself one question: is this within my control? If yes, he would act. If not, he would release it. It wasn't a dramatic vow. It was quiet, gentle, the kind of promise you whisper to yourself before sleep. And as the rain slowed and his eyelids grew heavy, he felt lighter. A boy on the edge of manhood, beginning to see the shape of wisdom not as brilliance, but as clarity. The next morning, the lesson met him again. His phone buzzed with messages, plans, complaints, arguments among friends. He felt the urge to jump in, to defend himself, to prove a point. Then he remembered control. He breathed, put the phone down, and carried on. Wisdom he was learning was not in knowing everything, it was in knowing what to let pass. Later that week, he sat in class while his teacher spoke about college applications. A hand went up in the back. "But what if I don't get in? What if none of us do?" The room filled with anxious laughter, half joking, half fearful. He felt the same questions pressing on him, yet he remembered another line he had underlined in the book. "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." He realized the same could apply to fear. If it is not within your control, do not let it master you. He couldn't control the future, but he could control the effort of each day, the honesty of his work, the steadiness of his choices. That was enough. On Saturday, he walked through the park with headphones off, letting the world breathe around him. Children laughed near the swings. Dogs tugged at leashes. The air smelled of cut grass. It struck him, wisdom is not always found in books or classrooms. Sometimes it is simply seeing clearly. The mind quiets, and the world, in its ordinary way, teaches you to be present. He noticed how easy it was to miss life when lost in thought, and how rich it became when he paid attention. Another evening, he sat across from his mother at the dinner table. She looked tired, worn from work. He felt the urge to complain about his own stress, but instead he remembered something Seneca had once written. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than reality. So instead of giving voice to his worries, he asked her about her day. She smiled faintly, surprised, then began to share. Wisdom, he realized, was not only in managing his own mind, but in giving space to others. As the weeks passed, he began to carry these lessons like small stones in his pocket, not heavy, not burdensome, but grounding. Whenever he felt lost, he touched them again. Control what you can. Let go of what you cannot. See clearly. Live simply. Give space to others. This was wisdom, not final, not perfect, but enough to guide a boy stepping into the first light of manhood. And so, as the autumn deepened and the days grew shorter, the boy began to sense that his journey was just beginning. The next steps would not be easy,
but he would carry wisdom with him like a compass. Winter came quickly. The boy felt it in the cold air biting at his face as he walked to school, in the heavy sky that seemed to press lower each day. He also felt it in the challenges that arrived without warning. One morning, an email blinked on his phone. A rejection. A program he had applied to, one he had hoped might shape his future, had turned him away. His stomach sank. The familiar whisper of failure crept in. You're not enough. He wanted to throw the phone aside, crawl back under the covers, disappear. But then another voice rose, quieter but firmer, a voice he had begun to know through the pages of the Stoics. It is not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. Epictetus. The boy sat on the edge of his bed, breathing slowly. His heart was still heavy, but he chose not to let the rejection define him. Courage, he was beginning to see, was not about never feeling fear or disappointment. It was about standing up again, even with trembling hands. That day he walked into school with his head not high, but steady, and that steadiness was enough. Later that week, he stood before his class to give a presentation. Public speaking always rattled him. His voice felt too soft, his palms too sweaty. As he set his notes down on the podium, the old fear whispered again, "You're not good enough." But he remembered Marcus Aurelius. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. He realized the fear was only in his mind. The class was not an enemy. The silence was not a threat. He took a breath and spoke. His words were simple, maybe a little shaky, but they carried through the room. When it was done, he realized his heart was still beating, the world still turning. Courage had carried him through. On a quiet evening, he sat in his room thinking about the path ahead.
college, jobs, adulthood, all the unknowns waiting for him. Fear swelled like a wave, threatening to pull him under. But then he thought of Epictetus again, who had once been a slave and yet became a teacher of philosophy. If courage could carry a man through chains, surely it could carry a boy through uncertainty. So he whispered to himself, "I will meet tomorrow when it comes, not before." And in that moment, the wave receded. One Saturday afternoon, he joined his friends for a game of basketball. Halfway through, he tripped hard, landing on his knee. Pain shot up his leg, and embarrassment burned hotter than the scrape. Everyone laughed, though not cruelly, just the way friends do. For a moment, he wanted to storm off, to let pride protect him. But he remembered Seneca. Sometimes even to live is an act of courage. And sometimes, he thought, so is staying. So he laughed too, stood up, and kept playing. The sting faded, and the moment became only another story, not a scar. In the deepest part of winter, when the days were shortest, he faced a harder trial. A friend he trusted betrayed his confidence, sharing something private he had spoken in trust. The hurt ran deep. Anger rose, sharp and burning. But underneath it was fear. Fear of being vulnerable. Fear of being seen as weak. That was when he recalled Marcus again. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. He realized courage was not lashing out. It was choosing not to let pain harden him. He spoke to his friend calmly, explained the hurt, and walked away with dignity intact. It did not erase the betrayal, but it preserved his own integrity. By spring, when the air softened and the days grew longer, he carried courage in a quiet way, not as a banner or a shield, but as a steady flame inside him. He had learned, courage is not the absence of fear. It is standing in the storm without running. It is speaking with a shaky voice anyway. It is choosing to stay soft when the world tempts you to harden. And so, as the boy stepped forward into the warmer days, he carried not only wisdom, but courage too. 2 stones in his pocket, grounding him for what lay ahead.
Spring brought with it new light. The trees outside his window began to bud again, green returning where there had been only branches of gray. The boy felt the change not just in the air, but in himself. Wisdom had given him clarity. Courage had given him steadiness. But now life began to ask something deeper of him. Not only how he guided himself, but how he treated others. This was the season of justice. It began simply in the school cafeteria. A smaller student was being teased by a group at the table, their laughter sharp, their words meant to wound. The boy watched, uneasy. A part of him wanted to look away, to let it pass. But then he remembered Marcus Aurelius. What is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bees. Injustice to one, he realized, injures all. So he stood, walked over, and sat beside the boy being mocked. He didn't shout or fight. He simply offered presence, a quiet shield. The teasing faltered, the laughter dimmed, and in that moment he understood justice is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is simply choosing to stand with someone when no one else will. Later, he faced a subtler choice. A teacher had marked his test incorrectly, granting him more points than he had earned. He noticed it immediately. A part of him wanted to stay silent, to accept the higher grade. After all, no one else would know. But then he remembered Seneca's words. A good character, when established, is not easily overthrown. What kind of man would he become if he built himself on dishonesty, even small ones? So he approached the teacher, pointed out the mistake, and accepted the lower grade. The teacher nodded with respect, but more importantly, the boy nodded to himself. Integrity, he realized, was worth more than a score. As spring deepened, his friendships shifted. He noticed how easy it was to talk behind someone's back, to laugh at another's misstep. Yet he felt a tug inside, a quiet reminder that justice meant fairness even when no one else was watching. One afternoon, when gossip stirred among his friends, he spoke gently, "Maybe we don't know the whole story." His words were simple, but they shifted the tone. The laughter softened, and the subject changed. He realized that justice is often the choice to sow understanding where judgment is easier. Another lesson came when he volunteered at a community event with his mother. They handed out food to families who lined up quietly, waiting their turn. The boy noticed how some people avoided meeting the eyes of those in line, embarrassed or hurried. But he remembered Epictetus. Remember that you are an actor in a play, the length of which is determined by the author. And if he wishes it to be short, it is short. If long, it is long. If he wishes you to play the part of a poor man, see that you act it well. Each life was a role, no higher or lower than his own. He handed the food with a smile, looking each person in the eyes, not as charity, but as equality. In those moments he felt justice not as law, but as dignity given freely. Justice also met him at home. His younger sister borrowed his things without asking, leaving them scattered. Anger sparked quickly, but then he asked himself, was it just to demand respect while offering none? Was it just to guard his belongings more fiercely than his kindness? So instead of shouting, he spoke with her calmly. They argued, yes, but they also laughed. Justice, he realized, was not about winning. It was about balance, holding firm without cruelty, guiding without crushing. By summer's edge, the boy began to see that justice was less about rules and more about relationships. It was the invisible thread connecting him to others, friends, strangers, family, even those he would never meet.
he carried with him 3 truths. To be just is to be fair, even when silence is easier. To be just is to be honest, even when dishonesty is rewarded. And to be just is to treat others with dignity, even when the world forgets to. And so, with justice added to wisdom and courage, the boy stepped further into manhood, each virtue no longer separate, but weaving together into a way of living.
Summer stretched long and warm. The days were golden, heavy with sun, filled with the energy of friends, freedom, and possibility. But with freedom came temptation, the pull of excess, the ease of distraction. This was the season of temperance. It began with something simple. His friends invited him out late on a weeknight. There was nothing wrong with it, just time together, laughter, music. But the boy knew he had work to do the next day. A quiet voice tugged at him, reminding him of Marcus Aurelius. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. He realized that temperance was not about denying joy, but about choosing balance. So he stayed for a while, enjoyed the evening, then went home early. He woke refreshed, his work done well, and his laughter from the night still with him. Balance, he learned, gave joy more depth than excess ever could. Another lesson came in the form of money. He had saved from a summer job, a small stack of bills folded neatly in his drawer. The urge was strong to spend it all, new clothes, games, things to show off. But he remembered Seneca's teaching. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. So he set a rule for himself. He would save half, spend a little, and give some away. He bought a book he wanted, saved the rest, and quietly gave a few bills to a donation box at the grocery store. The joy of balance was richer than the thrill of spending it all. Temperance also touched the way he used his time. On long summer afternoons, he often scrolled endlessly on his phone, hours disappearing like sand through fingers. One day, he caught himself staring blankly at the screen, restless and unsatisfied. He put the phone down and stepped outside. The air smelled of cut grass. The sky was streaked with slow-moving clouds. He sat in the shade and read, or sometimes just watched the world move. It wasn't grand, but it was real. He realized that temperance was not about denying joy, but about choosing what truly nourished him. Later in the summer, a friend challenged him to a game of strength at the gym. They lifted weights, pushed limits, and the boy felt pride in what his body could do. But he also noticed how easy it was to slip into comparison, to let pride turn to arrogance. He remembered Marcus Aurelius again. Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. Strength, he realized, was not in showing off, but in steady discipline. So he lifted what he could, encouraged his friend, and left the gym not with pride, but with balance. As summer turned to autumn,
and the boy prepared for his final year before adulthood, he looked back on what the seasons had given him. Wisdom had taught him clarity. Courage had steadied his steps. Justice had shaped how he treated others, and temperance had shown him balance, the quiet strength of self-mastery. On one of the last warm evenings, he sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. The air was cool, cicadas humming softly in the distance. He thought of all he had learned and all he had yet to learn. And he realized something. Manhood was not a destination he would suddenly arrive at. It was a path, walked day by day, guided by virtues older than time, yet alive within him. He whispered to himself the four truths he now carried: to seek wisdom, to act with courage, to live with justice, and to walk in temperance. The sky grew dark, stars flickering awake, and in that quiet night the boy felt ready. Not because he had all the answers, but because he carried with him the tools to meet whatever came. And so his story, like all stories, was not an ending, but a beginning.
The story of the boy is also the story of each of us. We stand, no matter our age, on the edge of choices. The world will always ask more of us: to hurry, to compare, to consume, to chase. But beneath the noise, there is a quieter path, a path marked by four steady lights: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Take a breath. Let the air move in slowly and release it gently. Remember, wisdom is yours in every moment you pause to ask what is truly in your control. Courage is yours each time you step forward, even when the ground feels uncertain. Justice is yours whenever you act with fairness, no matter how small the choice. And temperance is yours when you choose balance, savoring enough instead of chasing more. These virtues do not belong to the past. They are not locked in old books or ancient Rome. They live in you, here, now, in every word you speak, in every step you take, in every breath you breathe. So as the boy's story fades, your own story continues, a journey not of perfection, but of practice, day by day, moment by moment. And tonight, as you rest, you can carry with you the gentle knowledge that you already have what you need: a clear mind, a steady heart, a just spirit, and a balanced life. Close your eyes, let the noise of the day dissolve, and step softly into tomorrow, guided by the four virtues.